Last but certainly not least, I would like to invite Ms. Dorothea Ioannou, CEO of American P&I Club. Ms. Ioannou, as of August 2022, assumed the position of CEO of SCB, becoming the first female CEO to lead an international group club in the 167 years since the first mutual of the current group were founded.
Well, I guess I'm going to say good evening. For some reason, I've been asked to speak about glass ceilings. Seriously, though, I would like to thank WISTA. I'm going to put this down because you know what happens every time I do this? The thing is in my face. So I'd like to thank WISTA International for the invitation to speak here today at the 2022 conference in Geneva and for the opportunity to provide some of my insights on matters of diversity and gender equality from my perspective and through my journey as I've lived it in the marine insurance industry. Having been involved with WISTA since the early 2000s, though, it's especially rewarding for me to speak here today on this topic with so many of my lifelong friends. So, Victor Hugo, a famous French writer, poet, once said, "There's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come." My sister members of WISTA International, the time for our idea, the promotion of a merit-based business environment free of stereotypes based on gender, age, race, or perceived differences appears to have finally come. More than ever, we hear of women in some of the highest positions in industry, positions which represent not just private companies, but which represent institutions, unions, international groups, government bodies, and trade associations, and we can all take credit for having played a role in moving our collective agenda forward with such unrelenting energy and determination through the years. Of course, it's perhaps to be expected that more and more women have risen upward in corporate management roles in proportion to the expanding pool of women with much higher levels of education or business experience, and maybe more significantly, more freedom than our mothers and our grandmothers ever enjoyed. The merit-based promotion of women and their entrepreneurial success is increasingly natural the better educated and the more experienced we become, regardless of our gender. The increasing numbers of women in leadership positions, me included, especially in male-dominated sectors such as mine, like marine insurance, is reflective of a natural evolution of a changing talent pool. But that is not the whole picture. We should recognize, though, that many of us have been comparatively fortunate to have been in professions or in industries or in companies that have been more gender neutral than others. All of us work continuously to exceed expectations, but this can be more easily converted to professional success or recognition in some environments as compared to others. Indeed, it could be said from a statistical perspective that the marine insurance industry, the one that I have lived in, especially that of P&I, has been historically and traditionally a very male-dominated profession, perhaps having lagged behind many other sectors within the maritime industry and especially within the insurance sector. However, I was fortunate in my journey first to have been given my first real opportunity by a WISTA sister who sits among you today in this room, none other than Ioannou Topaloglou, by the way. A pioneer in employing women in the marine insurance sector, and then second, in my continuing journey, to have built my P&I career in one of what I would call the aforementioned gender-neutral business organizations, one which embraced my actions, including that of building a satellite office almost entirely staffed by female executives, even before I had been identified by management for eventual global leadership of the company. So from a personal perspective, the flood of well wishes and congratulations and support that I received upon the announcement of my recent appointment can only be described as overwhelming. And I've been so very deeply moved by all of the things that all of you have said to me. And hearing from many of you that I am seen by peers as a role model and a symbol of changing times signifies, as I said before, that our time has come. And I say from the bottom of my heart, I need to say this here, that I thank everyone for the outpouring of love because I really felt it and I feel it. But of course, I'm often asked, so how did you do it? It's naturally an important question, and I believe, as I presume do those who ask, that perhaps the answer can shed some light on a path for future female leaders. The simplest and most basic answer, of course, is that I was exceptionally focused and that I worked really, really hard. However, I was not focused on becoming a CEO. In fact, I was never focused on some long-term plan of ascension, ever. Instead, what I was focused on was the task in front of me. I was focused on being the best professional, the best colleague, and most importantly, the best person that I could be at whatever position I was blessed to hold. However, that's not the whole story. You see, as I mentioned, I was fortunate enough to work for an organization which was and is non-gender biased, and indeed not only indifferent to any and all outward characteristics as a form of professional stereotypes, but more profound, positively sensitive to the individuality of its valuable people's needs. The true and full story is that I did not do this by myself, not at all. I did this with the support of many people along the way, and this is the key insight I wish to impart to all of you. It is within the power of each and every one of us to make a difference, to create an environment where we do not just empower people, but where we enable people. We as managers and as employers, and generally as professionals, have an obligation to cultivate an environment which opens pathways for those we identify as capable of taking on more and who want to take on more. So how do we do this? We ask questions. We create the opportunity for dialogue in organizations. We don't leave matters to chance and circumstance. Let me share a personal story, and I hope that I will demonstrate what I'm trying to say here. My promotion back in 2010 to the Executive Committee of Shipowners Claims Bureau, the manager of the American Club, made me the first woman back then to hold such a position since its inception in 1927. I was very excited, but I was also a little anxious because I knew that that appointment would mean that I would have to travel for management meetings. And this was, of course, way before we were doing anything virtual. But before the first meeting that I would need to attend was even scheduled, I got a phone call. I got a phone call from the principals asking me if I would have a hardship in attending. And they asked that if choosing the dates, if leaving to me the option to choose the dates would work best for me, which would work best for me, would make it easier on me. Why did they do that? Because they knew that I was a single mother at that time, raising an 11-year-old daughter, and that it would be especially difficult for me to coordinate childcare and be away for an extended period of time. That, my dear WISTA sisters, knocked me off my chair. And that was the first of many such actions. You see, they had identified me as someone who would add value to their goals, to the goals of the company. They had empowered me with the appointment, but then they recognized that they needed to take actions to ensure that I would be able to contribute. Remarkably, the individuals were not women, but the leaders of the club at that time, two very well-known men in the marine insurance industry, Joe Hughes and Vince Solarino, who also happened to be WISTA USA members. To give you an idea of how progressive this environment was, these two very same men, some 9 years later, having appointed me to the position of Chief Commercial Officer, took me to my first annual International Group General Managers meeting and workshop strategy session. At these annual meetings, each club sends 3 representatives. I doubt you'd be surprised to find out that that particular one in 2019, it was me, the only woman attending from any club, and 38 men representing the 13-member clubs of the group. While not surprising, I won't hide from you the fact that I was somewhat intimidated in that environment. Yes, I know it's hard to believe I get intimidated sometimes. Fortunately, I had the full support of my management, which made all the difference. But that image of me in that room, in this big square, me and 38 men, provoked thought, it provoked dialogue, and it provoked action. And so while it was only 3 years ago, I'm pleased to advise that this is not the case today, and that there are more and more women filling leading roles within the group clubs. So I am not the only female at these meetings. Our time has come. Creating an environment like this in an organization requires commitment not only from the top down, but also a daily buy-in from the bottom up and all around. If I did not have good, strong people all around me, even with the best intentions of leadership, I wonder sometimes would I have made it. We must remember that it's not only about someone helping to pave the way, but it's also about the people with whom we work. We cannot expect support from our peers or from those that follow us unless we are dedicated to providing that support ourselves in the first place. It's in our power to ensure that we enable others, and I really love that word, enable, that we become that person that others want to work with and for, and most importantly, that we prepare those around us and coming up behind us to occupy our space before we leave it. Believe me, you will not be able to handle the next step if the spot that you occupy now is not handled well after you. We must always keep that 360-degree big picture vision in mind every single day. It is that which keeps us grounded, strong, and moving steadily forward. It is that which helps us to remember that we are no better than those that came before us, nor those that will come after us. It is that which reminds us that if we truly want to make a difference, we must think beyond ourselves while still seeing and remembering the part that we play. This, I promise you, makes breaking glass ceilings that much easier. When you stand steady marshaling the force of those around you, there is no glass ceiling too thick to break through. My appointment, you see, may say much about me and my accomplishments within the industry, but it also says something impressive and possibly more significant and better telling about what we need to do, about the organization, about the ethos, about the policies of the leadership before me, and about the people across 7 offices that work with me. After all, it's the organization that made the difference. It was the American Club and its managers that decided to appoint the first woman CEO to ever lead a P&I club in its history. And a multitude of people whose support made it possible for me to stand tall amid the shards of that shattered glass. That could only happen in the right environment, in an environment where conscious action solved problems and broke barriers. For any of us to move forward, to bring about better standards, and to reach a point where the first female anything is no longer news, we need to think about what we individually and then collectively in our organizations are doing to get us there. All of us in this room continue to face challenges, and despite them, we make strides in our respective sectors. But we must also remember that some of what we may face as challenges may still be seen as quite privileged from the perspective of many women in the world. I am no political activist. I'm going to take this in a different route right here. But we must always be conscious of the struggles of women all over the world who battle against restrictions on fundamental freedoms, freedoms that we take for granted as rights. And that doesn't mean that we believe that the rights that we enjoy are gifts. No, they are inherent. But it simply means that we are grateful to those who came before us, to those who fought and won those battles, which secured for us freedoms to enjoy our rights. Unfortunately, and I just read this recently as I was doing my research for this speech, according to the United Nations 2022 Gender Snapshot, the world is not on track to achieve gender equality by 2030. Violence against women remains high. Specifically, 1 woman or girl is killed by someone in their own family every 11 minutes. In 2021, 1 in every 10 women and girls between the ages of 15 and 49 were subjected to sexual or physical violence by an intimate partner. Over 380 million women and girls exist in conditions of extreme poverty, living on less than $1.90 a day. In certain developing nations, if the current trends continue, there's going to be more women and girls living in extreme poverty by 2030 than they do today. If you can believe it, a woman's life expectancy was shortened by 1.6 years in 2021 as compared to 2019. So while we here talk about career development, in many parts of the world there are women who will never even contemplate completing an education, let alone breaking any glass ceiling. So I say to you, as you manage your challenges and overcome your obstacles, do it with gratitude. Gratitude for those who came before you and endured hardships that you will never have to know. While we can't save each and every girl or woman in the world, not individually, what we can do is keep them in our minds and make a difference in the circle within which we live, in the community within which we work, in the network within which we connect, in our own companies, with our friends, with our families. As I illustrated, you cannot break a glass ceiling all by yourself. So you cannot think about your course in life and this world in a vacuum. You need to be conscious and aware of what's going on around you, and I mean that literally, with your children, with your families, with your friends, your colleagues. You need to ask questions, you need to look around, and you need to really look. Think about the things that are or may have been in the past barriers or obstacles to you and share the solutions that worked for you. If you have authority, use it. Use it to smooth the path, to make it just that much easier for others around you. I ask that we contemplate the work that still needs to be done to maintain this momentum we have developed. The achievement of gender equality, indeed the elimination of prejudice in the workplace, is a quiet and steady work of proving ourselves over time, not by word, but by deed, by action, by example, our example, and by tenacity. We should look long and hard in the mirror, not be afraid to admit where we have gone wrong, but also have the courage, the determination, and the patience to create new solutions, new strategies, and implement better plans. Sometimes we will need to be forceful, sometimes less so. Sometimes we will need to be forgiven for the impulse to celebrate where we have some success, and that's okay. But then sometimes a simple, quiet confidence in the inevitability of our cause should prevail. In our very special domain of shipping and trade, WISTA International has been and will remain a lodestar in facilitating our future success. And as the words of Victor Hugo foreshadowed over nearly 2 centuries ago, we can be inspired by the knowledge that the time for the idea at the core of WISTA's mission, although long in coming, in our world of maritime has at last arrived. And we must continue to harness its power, both for ourselves and for the generations of women to come. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.